I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of a mess I never saw coming. My name's Jake, and I've been married to Emily for almost 5 years. We met in college, and honestly, I thought we had something solid. She was always a bit bitchy, always throwing little jabs, but I figured that was just her way of joking around. We had a good life, sort of. We argue here and there like any couple, but I never thought she'd cheat on me. Not in a million years. Things started feeling off about 2 months ago. Emily became more distant, more irritable. She'd cancel plans last minute, say she was busy with work when I knew she hadn't worked late. Her phone was glued to her hand more than usual. I'd catch her deleting texts or hiding her notifications when she thought I wasn't looking. It was small stuff, but enough to gnaw at me. I'd ask her about it and she'd brush it off, call me paranoid. She'd laugh and say, "Jake, relax. You're overthinking again." But I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to face it. Then came the day I found the lipstick stain on her collar. I was doing laundry and I saw it and froze. My stomach sank. The lipstick was a shade I didn't recognize, bright red, definitely not ours. I asked her about it and she spun some story about her sister visiting and maybe leaving it on her shirt. Yeah, right. Her sister was supposed to be in town, but she told me she was going out to dinner with her. I didn't say anything at the time, just kept quiet, but I knew it was BS. Something was definitely going on. A few days later, I saw her phone light up with a message from someone named Matt. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just happened to glance at her screen when she left it on the counter. The message said something like, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Let's finally do it. Don't forget my place." My blood ran cold. I didn't need to read more. My wife was cheating on me with my best friend, and she was planning to meet him that very night. That's when I realized everything was falling apart and I'd been blind this entire time. How could I have missed all the signs? Or maybe I just didn't want to see them. Either way, I was screwed. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying all the little moments I'd ignored or brushed off. I kept thinking about how Emily had been acting so distant, so irritated, and how she'd suddenly become so secretive. Then that message. It felt like a punch to the gut. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. Part of me wanted to burst in there and yell, but I also knew I needed a plan. I didn't want to do anything impulsive, not yet. The next day, I decided to follow her. I couldn't just sit around wondering. That afternoon, I pretended to leave for work early, but I actually followed her. She told me she was going to the office, but instead, she headed across town, straight to her sister's place. I parked a few blocks away and watched her go inside. She was there for about an hour, then left with a small bag in her hand. I followed her again, keeping my distance, and saw her go into some dingy apartment building. That's when I knew I was right. She was meeting someone and I didn't need to guess who anymore. I spent that entire night trying to come up with what to do. I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated, angry all at once. I kept thinking about all the times I'd been there for her, how I'd trusted her, shared everything with her. And she was out there lying to me, cheating on me. With my best friend, no less. The guy I introduced her to, the guy I trusted to be a friend. I felt like an idiot. I'd always thought I was a good husband, but I couldn't even see what was happening under my nose. How blind was I? Or maybe I just didn't want to believe it. I decided I was going to confront her that morning, but I didn't want a scene in the house. I wanted her to admit it, face me, and own up to what she was doing. The thing is, Emily is the kind of woman who's always been bitchy, manipulative, quick with an excuse. I knew she'd lie her way out of it, twist it around, blame me for being paranoid or insecure. That's her style. But I was done with her lies. I had proof enough to finally get to the truth. When she came home that evening, I was already waiting. I didn't say a word at first, just looked at her, cold and quiet. She looked surprised, maybe even a little guilty, but then she started her usual nonsense. "Jake, what's wrong? Why are you acting like this?" I stared at her, dead serious. I told her I knew about her affair, about Matt, about everything. Her face twisted into a sneer and she started lying again, saying it was all a mistake, that she was only comforting Matt because he was going through a rough patch, that it didn't mean anything. She laughed, told me I was delusional, accused me of spying and invading her privacy. I felt my blood boil. It was like talking to a wall. She'd deny, deny, deny. no matter what I showed her or how I confronted her. I could feel my hands trembling. I'd never been this angry, this hurt. All the years, all the love I thought we shared, it was just a lie. She told me I was insecure, that I was crazy for suspecting her. But I had seen the messages, the lipstick, her strange behavior. Somehow she made me question myself. Maybe I was too controlling, too paranoid. But now I knew the truth. She was a cheating, lying bitch who'd been sneaking around behind my back, hiding her affair with Matt. And she had the nerve to deny everything, to call me crazy. That's when I realized I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I had to get out. I needed a plan to end this, to make her pay for what she did. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at Emily the same way. The woman I thought I knew was just a facade, and I felt like a fool for ever trusting her. But I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. No way. I decided I had to be smarter about this, had to plan my next move carefully. I wanted her to feel the consequences of what she did, to know I was not some doormat she could cheat on and dismiss. Over the next couple of days, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. I checked her phone more carefully, took screenshots of the messages with Matt, and even recorded her when she didn't know. I wanted everything in case she tried to deny or destroy proof. I also set up a small hidden camera in the house, just in case she tried to sneak out again or bring Matt over while I was there. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. I knew she'd try to spin her lies, but I was ready for her. Meanwhile, she was still acting bitchy, trying to gaslight me, calling me paranoid and saying I was overreacting. She threw a fit when I asked her for her phone, told me I was crazy for accusing her of something she didn't do. But I didn't back down. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I kept my cool and kept collecting evidence, because I knew ultimately I had to confront her with everything laid out. No more guessing, no more pretending. I wanted her to own up, to admit what she'd done, and to face the consequences. I knew she'd eventually try to leave, maybe take some of her things and run. She was already planning her escape, I could see it in her eyes, but I was prepared. I reached out to a lawyer I knew, just to understand what my rights were if I decided to divorce her. I also called a friend who's been through something similar, just to get some advice on how to handle the emotional fallout. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd wasted so much time on her, giving her the benefit of the doubt, thinking she was just being bitchy but faithful. Turns out she was just a liar and a cheat. The worst part was the guilt. I kept asking myself, had I been blind all along? Or was I just too stupid to see the signs? I kept replaying all the moments I questioned myself, the little things that now seemed obvious. I was furious at her, but I also felt betrayed by myself for not seeing this coming sooner. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something drastic, but I knew I had to stay calm. I had to be smart about this because I knew once I blew up, there'd be no going back. I had to gather my strength, find my resolve, and get ready to confront her on my terms. The day I finally decided to confront her again, I knew I had to do it right, had to lay everything on the table without giving her any room to wiggle out of it. I set up the scene carefully. I had the evidence on my phone, screen captures of her messages with Matt, the recordings from the house, the photos of her lipstick. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face cold, detached. I didn't want her to see how much she'd hurt me, not yet. When she got home that evening, she was trying her usual manipulative act. She was acting like she was the victim, crying fake tears, pretending she had no idea what I was talking about. She told me I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that she'd never cheat on me. That's when I pulled out the phone, placed it on the table, and started playing the recordings. I showed her the messages, the photos, the proof I'd collected. Her face drained of color instantly. She stammered, tried to deny it, but I wasn't having any of her bullshit. Her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned, then angry, then desperate. She screamed at me, called me a jealous psycho. "You're controlling, Jake. You're insecure," she spat. "You're making all this up because you're scared of losing me." I told her she could spin her stories all she wanted, but I had everything documented. That's when she finally broke, started crying, and admitting she'd been lying. She said she was bored, that Matt had been her escape. She insisted it meant nothing, that she loved me, but she just couldn't resist the thrill. She called herself a bitch, a fool, and begged me to forgive her. I felt a surge of anger mixed with heartbreak. I never thought I'd be in this place, seeing the woman I married betray me so badly. It was like my entire world was crumbling piece by piece. I wanted to lash out, scream at her, hurt her the way she'd hurt me. But I stayed calm, kept my voice steady. I told her I needed time to think, that I was done with her lies. I told her I wasn't sure if I could forgive her and that I'd be taking some space to figure everything out. She begged me, pleaded for another chance, said she'd stop seeing Matt, promised she'd change. But I knew better. I knew once the trust was broken, it was almost impossible to fix. After she left the room, I sat there alone, feeling numb. All the betrayal, all the lies, they hit me like a freight train. I'd gone from feeling like the luckiest guy alive, planning to propose, to feeling like a complete idiot for ever trusting her. She was a bitchy, manipulative liar. I felt humiliated, furious, and deeply hurt. I realized I'd been blind for so long, but now I saw everything clearly. I knew I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for my marriage or cut my losses. Either way, I'd never forget this betrayal. It was burned into my mind forever. I took a long, deep breath and started drafting a plan. I was done letting her manipulate me. Whatever happened next, it was going to be on my terms. In the days that followed, I kept my distance, but I was constantly thinking about what to do next. I knew I couldn't stay in that house, not with her lying around pretending nothing had changed. The betrayal had cut too deep. I started packing a bag, planning to leave for a while, maybe stay with my brother or a friend. I needed space to breathe, to think clearly. I also told her that if she wanted to talk, she could come find me, but I wasn't coming back until I was ready. That seemed to throw her off, which I took as a small victory. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling of being so completely duped. How had I been so blind? I kept replaying everything, the late nights, the secretive texts, her bitchy attitude change, and asking myself how I missed all those signs. Was I just a fool for ever trusting her? Or was she just a master manipulator? Honestly, I still didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I felt like I had been used, played, and discarded like trash. The worst part was the sinking suspicion that she'd probably been cheating on me for months behind my back, and I hadn't even noticed. I also reached out to a lawyer just to find out what my options were. It was a cold, practical step, but I needed to know what my rights were if I decided to divorce her. Divorce papers, custody, financial separation. I needed to get everything sorted out in case I decided to cut ties completely. I wasn't ready for that yet, but I wanted to be prepared. I also spoke with a counselor to help process the emotional fallout, because, honestly, I was falling apart inside. Every time I thought about her, I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak so intense it was hard to breathe. One night while I was alone, I started to realize that I'd been putting her over myself for so long. I tried to fix things, to believe she was just stressed or bitchy, but now I saw her for what she really was. A liar, a cheat, a manipulator. I'd invested years in her, and all I got was betrayal. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for this marriage anymore. Not after she crossed every line. I deserved better, and I owed it to myself to walk away. I realized I had been holding on to the hope that she'd change, but I had to accept that some people just aren't worth it. Some betrayals are too deep to fix. So I started planning my exit. I found an apartment nearby, packed my essentials, and set a date to leave. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to do it. I also made sure I had all the evidence I needed to protect myself legally, just in case she tried to make false accusations or manipulate the situation even further. I didn't want to get caught off guard again. As I packed, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I was finally taking back control, and sadness because I was saying goodbye to what I thought was my life for so many years. I had trusted her, loved her, and in the end she'd betrayed everything we had. That night I sat alone in my empty apartment, staring at the walls and thinking about all I'd lost. But I also thought about what I'd gained: clarity, strength, a way out. I knew this was the start of healing, even if it didn't feel like it right now. I'd survived her lies, her betrayal. and I was still standing. That's more than I can say for her. Whatever comes next, I'm determined to rebuild, to find myself again, and to never let anyone treat me that way again. I learned a hard lesson about trust, about reading the signs, and about valuing myself enough to walk away. That's what I'll carry with me from this nightmare. Now that I've moved out and started fresh, I can finally breathe again, but it's not easy. The pain of betrayal doesn't just go away overnight. Every day I catch myself replaying what happened, wondering how I missed the signs, how I ever let someone like Emily get so close. But at the same time, I feel a strange sense of relief. I'm no longer living in her web of lies. I'm free from the constant tension, the sneaking around, the fake smiles. I've taken back control of my life, and honestly, it feels like I'm finally starting to heal. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this experience. I learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes people hide who they really are behind a mask. I learned that you can love someone and still have to walk away because some betrayals are just too deep to fix. I also learned that it's okay to feel weak, to cry, to be angry, because those emotions are part of the process. Most importantly, I learned that I am stronger than I thought. I survived the worst, and I'm still standing. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Don't dismiss your gut feelings just because you want things to work out or because you're afraid of being alone. Trust your instincts, even if it means facing uncomfortable truths. And when you realize you're being betrayed, don't try to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. Cut your losses, gather your strength, and walk away. There's life after betrayal, and it's yours to rebuild. As for me, I don't know what the future holds yet. I'm taking it one day at a time. I know I'll eventually trust again, but it'll be on my terms. I won't let anyone gaslight me or manipulate me ever again. I'll focus on myself, on healing, and on finding happiness outside of someone else's lies. I know I'll be okay, better than okay someday. Because I survived this, and that's the real victory. Thanks for listening. It's a painful story, but maybe someone out there needs to hear that even in betrayal, there's hope. There's always hope.